All right, many thanks for remaining tuned. You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the NTA. And before bringing our guests for today's conversation, let's take this background report put together by our correspondent Oyeyemi Ajayi.
Constitutional amendments in Nigeria, particularly those aimed at addressing underrepresentation, are inherently complex, requiring broad consensus from both National Assembly and state houses of assembly. The current amendment process, which commenced in February 2024, is designed to be more inclusive and methodical. It integrates public consultations and leverages digital platforms to encourage wider participation and transparency. Key issues being addressed during the public hearing includes federal restructuring, local government autonomy, the establishment of state police, national security reforms, and the inclusion of women in political leadership. These topics reflect long-standing governance challenges and the urgent need for structural reforms. A particularly critical area of focus is the political participation of historically marginalized groups, especially women. The persistent gender imbalance within Nigeria's political landscape underscores the importance of intentional policy measures. As part of the ongoing review, legislators are considering bills that propose the creation of reserved seats for women in the national and state assemblies, mandates gender balance within the Federal Character Commission, and promote broader inclusivity in leadership positions. The International Legislative Women's Dialogue, held in October last year, reaffirmed its commitment to advancing gender-responsive reforms. Building on this momentum, the Deputy Speaker sponsored a bill advocating special seats for women, a temporary affirmative action measure aimed at enhancing women's representation in governance. With increased attention on women's participation in political appointments, the critical questions now are: will these proposals advance beyond debates, and what mechanisms are required to ensure their full and effective implementation? These are some of the pressing issues our guests will explore in more depth shortly.
All right, Yemi, thank you. You made it seem as if all we're going to discuss on this matter is gender, but of course it's a major proposal. You know, we hear from most of the zones and all that. But let me start with the introductions. We have seated here in the studio with us Professor Kabir Mato, who is a political scientist, and of course he's a regular face on Good Morning Nigeria, and we're glad to have him right here in the studio, not via Zoom today. Professor Mato, we're glad to have you with us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Nigeria.
Eric.
All right, also here for the conversation is Hajia Zainab Abubakar Ibrahim, Deputy National Women Leader, APC, Deputy National Secretary, APC, and Executive Director of Women Affairs, APC, also Chairman Board, Federal Teaching Hospital, Gombe. Many thanks for joining us, ma'am.
Thank you very much for having me. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, let's start. I hope, Professor Mato, you forgive me. I would like to start. Yes, she is a politician. So let's start from, the Deputy National Women Leader of the APC. Let's look at this, public hearing and all that. From your, point of view, what are the predominant issues so far?
The Constitution review public hearing has been on in the past months, and one of the most important and most prominent is the gender special seat bill for women in the two houses of in the two chambers of the National Assembly and the state houses of assembly. And for all Nigerian women and women across the world, that is the most important bill for us. Is the litmus test for the constitutional review to have the gender bills, especially the special seat for women bill in the House of Representatives being passed by the grace of God. And there is also the issue of local government autonomy, There is also the other issues of the constitutional review matters, but what matters to us most is the special seats for women bill that is being sponsored by the Deputy Speaker, House of Representatives, Right Honorable Benjamin Kalu, who we call our champion, and 12 other members of the House of Representatives, that has passed second reading in the House of Representatives, and we hope and we pray that it passes and then becomes a bill.
When you say special seats, what number is being advocated for?
Okay, the special seat that is being advocated for is 74 in the two chambers of the National Assembly. That is 36, one per state of the federation, and then one for FCT. So when you have 36 seats for Senate, and then 36 seats for House of Representatives, and then 2 for FCT, in the National Assembly, you have a total of 74 seats to be set aside, only exclusively for women. And then in the state houses of assembly, we are looking at 3 seats per state. That is a seat per zone of the state.
Senatorial.
Yes, per senatorial zone in the state. And we are at the end of that, we'll have 108 seats for women exclusively in the state houses of assembly.
In this constitution review, is there a procedure on how these women are going to emerge? Because some questions in some quarters is what happens if political parties do not field female candidates? What happens if they are not voted for? How would you ensure?
Of course, there are procedures. First of all, just as it's ongoing now, the bill was sponsored and read in the House, and it has passed first and second reading and has been forwarded to the Constitutional Review Committee for public hearing to seek for input from civil society organizations, women advocacy groups, and even political parties. And by the way, I am the Deputy National Secretary of IPAC, not APC. Yes, in APC, I'm the Deputy National Woman Leader, and in IPAC, which is Interparty Advisory Council, I'm the Deputy National Secretary. And to promote inclusion, IPAC created a Directorate for Women Affairs. Yes, and I am the Executive Director of that Directorate. So, and part of our mandate is the advocacy for the special seat bill to be passed. And after public hearing, the bill will then be sent back to the House of Representatives and the Senate to obtain 2/3 majority of the members and the senators, after which it will be sent to Mr. President for, States Houses of Assembly to also obtain 2/3 majority, and then sent to Mr. President for assent. The process is being taken charge by INEC. INEC is going to do a delimitation of constituencies. INEC is going to add 2 constituencies per state, one for Senate and one for House of Representatives. And so also for the state houses of assembly, we are going to have 3 additional constituencies for the states. And once that is done, INEC is going to monitor and ensure compliance, and the seats are going to be contested for only by women. So there is no issue of saying we don't have women. We have capable and capacity women that can contest and win, and then add their quota to national development.
All right, ma'am. Let's put you on hold. Thank you for speaking, in depth about this gender provision. But let me bring in Professor Mato, and I just want us to look at the merit of this process. Since 1999, we've had, a number of constitutional, amendments or alterations, as you may. I think about 5 or so and all that. How do you evaluate this present process? Is it likely to be the same? Are we going to see any fundamental or paradigm shift in all of this?
Well, thank you very much, Claire. Again, good morning, Nigeria. I think, as you rightly said, this is about the 5th time, that the National Assembly is, attempting to amend the Constitution. Agreed, it is a provision of the 1999 Constitution. It has made sufficient provision on how it can be amended, and that it can only be amended by the National Assembly and then getting the concurrence of the State House of Assembly. In the Nigerian case, Olisa Agbakoba went to court in 2010, 2011, to insist that constitutional amendment is like any other bill, passed by the National Assembly, and for it to become law, therefore, it requires a presidential assent. That still remains debatable because the chambers of the National Assembly never appealed that judgment, perhaps to go like the way the American society is going, because any alteration on the Constitution is a very tedious exercise. Constitutions are amended by the 2/3 majority of the 2 chambers, and then concurrence by the 2/3 of the 36 state houses of assembly that we have. But that's by the way. I think the problem that we are facing in Nigerian democracy today is that it's becoming a major chamber, a major department within the Nigerian National Assembly, chapter. That after every 4 years a parliament is elected, and then one of the major things that are on the table is amending the Constitution. So it becomes, and I used to know, because I've been involved quite for a long time, huge sums of money are budgeted for that exercise. So it has become a ritual. Now, whether there is need to amend or there is no need to amend, it's almost mandatory that the Senate and House of Representatives will have their constitutional amendment, committees.
But for you, is there a need to amend?
Well, when the need arises, you see, serious constitutions are not frequently and routinely amended. If you take the American Constitution that was crafted more than 200 years ago, you find that the number of amendments are really very minimal. But because it has become an institutionalized, phenomenon within the Nigerian legislative practice, every National Assembly comes up with this committee, and then Nigerians are invited to comment. But one fundamental issue is that the attitude of Nigerians to even implement the provisions of the Constitution as was crafted in 1999 seems to be severely lacking. And so what we do is that the moment we contest elections, either as members of the National Assembly, members of State Assembly, or executive arm of government, the next rival becomes the Constitution, because there will be a few of the provisions that may not be favorable or may not be desirable, or we don't seem to like them. And so what we do is to try to put up, through the instrumentality of this committee, to amend them.
Let me just talk about whether or not there's a need for this process. If you look at the turnout in all the zones, I mean, the halls are almost filled to capacity. I mean, with a lot of people making their contributions, making their proposals, and you heard Hajia talk about the voice of the women. So does that not give you the understanding that there is a sense of urgency for this process to happen?
Claire, this is not the first time we're having this public hearing. We had it in 2006, 2007. When the Constitution could not be amended because of the 3rd-term ambition of, the then President Olusegun Obasanjo. They went around the country. They went in, I think, 6 zones as the country is politically structured. And, the turnout was also very massive. But I understand that was, stalled because of 1 or 2 major issues. And then the style of the National Assembly then was to put all the bills together, and that once a single matter was affected and the entire bill crumbles, and that's precisely what happened. Now they have a different strategy. I don't have any issue with the desire to when Yar'Adua became president in 2007, the first thing he did was to set up the Justice OS panel, And one of the major recommendations of the Justice Mohammed West panel was the issue of proportional representation, which included, of course, the accommodation of several women in the legislative and even in the executive arm of government. Unfortunately, the same National Assembly did not see the light, or the president did not, even if the president did not submit, that as part of, the executive bill to the National Assembly then to consider. I don't know why the National Assembly at that material time did not bring it as a private member bill or extract it from the report of the Justice OS panel and then take it further for discussion. So proportional representation is what we have in peculiar societies like in Uganda, Rwanda, and several other places. And I think that's what, the women are agitating about. But then it tells you the lack of seriousness on the part of our national legislature and the political leadership in general, because very sensitive, important issues are always left in abeyance. Left in abeyance in the sense that as long as they do not capture, the moment and the attention of the frivolities of those who are in authority, then they become irrelevant. Yes, women every time agitated that they needed more representation. If you look at the nature of representation in both the Senate, the House of Representatives, and maybe even with the State Assembly, you will find that it's been oscillating. Sometimes you will see more representation, sometimes the representation will be very low, just as it is the case today. So I think what the National Assembly needs to do, instead of rigmaroling, going around the country trying to seek opinion of the people, why don't you dust the report of the Waste panel on electoral reform and try to see what you can do with it at this material time? I believe sincerely that if the Assembly and the government were sincere in 2010, 2009, this matter would have been resolved by now. At least it would have been substantially addressed to such an extent that the agitation that we see from the women folk in this country would have been substantially reduced. I mean, as you, it's part of our national question, like I keep saying. The moment you try to answer one, 2, 3, 4 more questions are going to rear their ugly head. So I think it's germane. Right, it's germane and it's doable, but then of course we don't have to continue to sensationalize and dramatize it.
Talking about dramatize, I want to know what you think about one of the key issues in this whole process, which is local government autonomy. Exactly a year ago, to be precise, July 11, 2024, there was a Supreme Court ruling, granting financial autonomy to local governments. Till date, local governments are still hoping that will be brought to light, and they will get that. Do you think this constitutional review would really bring a difference in all the issues that are being talked about?
Absolutely. The only way you can grant autonomy to local government councils in Nigeria is when the constitution is amended. And I think the Supreme Court, in all sense of humility, erred by giving that particular interpretation and ruling that they did about a year ago. And the failure, the inability of the realization of that particular judgment of the Supreme Court, I think hinges more on the constitutional provision, because the Constitution empowers the judiciary to make interpretations. And once the judiciary decides to make interpretations on matters that are not contestable, that are expressly stated, I think that type of interpretation becomes a nullity, and precisely that's why you are seeing what you are seeing today. You see, the judgment as far as the Supreme Court is concerned on the issue of local government autonomy, in my view, was an attempt to get what several political classes will desire through the back door. I give you an example. It first of all started since the constitutional amendment started in this country in 2003, in 2007, in 2011, and up to this moment. The constitutions from 2010, when it was first amended, up to the last amendment, had always proposed, the granting of financial autonomy to local government councils. And the National Assembly will pass it. Now, I remember clearly in 2010, 2011, it was almost done. It was on the floor of the Senate that the then Speaker of Katsina State House of Assembly came up when there was contention as to whether it was 23 or 24 states that actually concord with that particular piece of amendment. And the Speaker came right on the floor of the Senate and said, no, Katsina did not vote yes. And so that's why it scored 23. That was the highest that particular portion of the amendment scored in the history of this review. So I am saying that it is only the legislature that can amend the constitution to grant what, no matter what type of autonomy that it desires to the local government council. During President Buhari's period, the same Attorney General of the Federation today was the of the Governors Forum, right? Was the lawyer of the Nigeria's Governors Forum. They went to this, they went on and they signed an executive order. The president signed an executive order granting financial autonomy to the local government councils. And I understand that it is the current Attorney General that went to the Supreme Court and got the pronouncement that it was an illegality, that the president didn't have the constitutional powers to do that. So if the executive cannot get autonomy through that process of executive order, I don't know how the Supreme Court can just willingly interpret the Constitution in a manner that it desired in order to achieve certain political ends. And let me tell you, the Supreme Court in Nigeria is not just a court of justice. It's also a policy court. Mm-hmm. There are many instances that the Supreme Court will make rulings in order to maintain political, social, and economic stability, rather than saying this is judicial.
Professor Mato, thank you. You know, the issue of the local government areas, I mean, from what we hear, from the proceedings, there are different opinions. Some are asking for it to be, abolished entirely, so that the states will have control and determine, their own local government and then manage the resources themselves. While others are saying, why don't you make it as a third tier in the Constitution?
So,
you understand?
That's why we have problems. Just a minute, please.
Yes.
That's why we have problems. In a true federal democracy, the levels of government that are in recognition are normally two: the central government, the regional, provincial, or state governments. Now, the Constitution of the Federation empowers the units to also have their own constitutions. And the constitutions of the units of the Federation are normally defining the nature, the character, the content, and context of local administration.
That's the very essence of this public hearing.
So precisely.
So that at the end of the day, all the opinions and proposals will be collated. But I just wanted to welcome, while you were speaking, Dr. Mrs. Nita, Biak George, who is a politician, administrator. She's also social engineer and entrepreneur, gender advocate, and, I should add, president of Jonita Initiative for Women and Child Development, located here in Abuja. So it's all about gender, but we will be, of course, disaggregating the gender issues. But let's welcome her. Thank you very much for joining us for this conversation.
Thank you very much.
And quickly, before we come back to Hajia here, I'd like to hear your own opinion. I'm sure you must have been part of, the public hearings and all that. What are the issues about gender and how intense, is the clamor for space and seats reserved for women?
Well, thank you very much for having me amongst you this morning. I'm very happy to be seated very close to Professor Mato. Well, it's been a very interesting conversation, concerning the constitutional review, concerning the gender perspectives to the constitutional review. However, it is still very unfortunate, if we'll be honest with ourselves, that Nigerians still take the issues of gender inclusion for granted. We still look at it as a matter of just so that there is gender equity, just so that we are yet to begin to look at it from a necessity point of view. We are yet to begin to look at it as something that has to happen if our development must be wholesome. We look at gender issues as, let's just give it to the women. It's like a giving. Let's be merciful, and consider the women. But it goes beyond that. And like I would always use as an example, usually you will find that there is no home that can exist without a female. However uneducated that female is, however inexperienced that female is, every home requires, even if it is a female house help, for that home to thrive. So if it is as important as that, then how would you say that a country would exist without including women? Not because, okay, everybody's saying let's do it, no, but because it is a necessity for that country to thrive. I want Nigerians to begin to look at this gender inclusion issues from this perspective. It is not a given. It is not a let us do it, to please women. No, it has become a necessity because leaving half of the population of your nation in decision making is doing that country no justice.
But it will seem as if other proposals like state creation, like state place, like devolution of powers, like resource control, restructuring, and things like that, seem to be overshadowing this clamor. That's
exactly.
Because I don't know if
you are very correct, and that's why I'm bringing it out from this perspective. Because well, I'm even excited that the leadership of the House of Assembly is the House of Representatives has been passionate about the gender inclusion, especially with the bill, for the creation of particular seats for women in the House of Assembly. So I'm happy to see that. However, we will not stop there. We need to continue to push. We need Nigerians to see the urgency, for our development to be wholesome. Honestly, if you ask me, if I had my way, if I was going to speak to Mr. President, in spite of the fact that everybody is clamoring for construction of roads, improvement of education, health facilities, and what have you, if I had my way, I would tell Mr. President, you know what, we need to fix our minds first. We need to reorientate Nigerians on a lot of issues so that when we are doing this development matter, we are actually doing it because we want to achieve what we have set out to achieve. Enough of all the storytelling, enough of all the workshops and talk shops where we come and talk and then after everybody leaves, that's the end. We need to begin to make this, we need to begin to put action to words. We need to be serious about our about this inclusion, and also I will also need to speak to the women themselves. We don't seem to be as passionate as we should about this gender inclusion because some of us think it's not actually necessary. And as much as we are talking to men, women need to understand that whatever cultural barriers we have experienced in the past, it is time to break out of that shackle. It is time to break out of that and begin to see ourselves as part of this nation, as people who have something to contribute, not just something, but something integral to contribute to the
Dr.
development of this nation.
Yes, I'm sorry to again I just wanted to point out before Henry comes in. It's not just talk. I'm just wondering how much work you have done, because at the end of the day, it will be how many votes did you get? It will be thrown again to the public, and then the public will be the decider of whether or not it's included. So how much work, have you done to be able to get the necessary support, push for it to even, be accepted?
Yeah, a lot of work has gone into it, and advocacy. It is no longer activism. No, it's advocacy and lobbying, a lot of lobbying. And as we all know, Mr. President, that's President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, is a gender-sensitive person. He is one of the first governors to take a female as his deputy governor, and his wife is the highest time spent senator in the Nigerian Senate. She went to Senate 3 times, 12 years. And so we all know that she did that with the support of the husband. And so with that in place, we know that the president has that in mind to make sure that he helps us to lobby the legislators to pass this special seats bill. And then the bill is being sponsored by the Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives, and he's doing also a very great job on that. He has been on it, and we have been working together, lobbying, especially through IPAC, Interparty Advisory Council, is the body of all political parties in Nigeria registered.
Are you
Because
also lobbying people like Professor Mato, who may not even see, believe in
every member of Senate, every member of House of Representatives, every member of State Assembly belongs to a political party. We don't have the independence candidature in Nigeria. So we are going through the political parties to help us lobby with their members in the National Assembly and in the state assemblies. And I bring you good tidings. The Interparty Advisory Council has adopted what we term as twinning, where when you have the executive as a male, the assistant or deputy becomes a female. And that is what countries like Gambia did to attain almost 50% inclusion, and it's vice versa. If the executive is a woman, the deputy or vice becomes a female. This is also another low-hanging fruit method that we can achieve inclusion. But I want to specifically insist here that this time we have hope. This time we see light at the end of the tunnel, because we have a president who is passionate about it. We have the wife of the president who is working with the wives of the governors in various states to make sure they lobby their husbands, for their husbands to lobby members of the National Assembly and the State Assembly. Yeah, it's all about lobbying.
All right, many thanks, Hajia Ibrahim.
Because Yere is a potential...
because we are talking about numbers. If you look at it, if we don't lobby, it will never be passed. We are just 4 in the Senate, which is about 2.7%, which, if you take it seriously, the voice of women in the national and state assemblies do not exist. And more disturbing and alarming is the fact that in about 13 state houses of assembly, you don't have a single woman. Female representation.
Many thanks,
and their committees on women affairs are being headed by men. So even for that singular reason, I think they should pass this bill so that at least we can have in every state house of assembly a single female to head the Women Affairs Committee.
Thank you very much, Hajia Ibrahim. I'd like to get back to Dr. George. By the way, while Hajia Ibrahim was speaking, we had join us for the conversation Senator Ita Edang, former presidential aide, a legal practitioner and consultant to the National Assembly on Constitution Amendment. Many thanks for joining us, sir.
Thank you very much. Apologies.
Right. We'll get back to you, but of course, the issue on the floor at the moment is that of the reserved seats for women. And Dr. George, I'd like to get back to you. While you spoke, you talked about the fact that women need to be more passionate about this move, because maybe from your view or what you perceive, just a few women are really eager to see this come, to fruition. But speak to us about the preparedness of women. If this bill sees the light of the day, I mean, at the moment, yes, we have very few women, but I've also seen few women who get positions and who misrepresent, all right, or who underrepresent, or, I mean, whatever the word is. Do you really think that this will not eventually, bring about some form of mockery on the women folk? I mean, when you have more women, we have few women, we're not seeing enough power, enough push, enough positivity from them. Do you really think the women are ready, if this comes to light, to lead effectively and represent not just the women, but of course, Nigerians in general?
Well, I'm not trying to sound patronizing to women, so I'll be very honest. As much as we have a good number of women who are prepared for these roles, as much as we have a lot of women who have spent time working on themselves, and then a few women who have had the opportunity to lead at one point or the other, I would mention myself, as an instance. I've had the opportunity to serve at the local government level as a supervisory councillor. I've had the opportunity to serve as advisor to the local government chairman. I had the opportunity to serve as local government administrator for 3 years. And I can tell you for a fact that we did our best, and just so I'm not sounding too humble, we did a good job by the special grace of God. And why I'm confident to say that is for the fact that right after my tenure as administrator, we were able to ensure that a woman succeeded me. And I'm sure that, I don't know how many states that has happened in Nigeria, where a female local government chairman is succeeded by another female. At the moment, a female is sitting at the local government chairman in Jaba local government, where I served in Kaduna State. And so I can tell you for a fact that quite a number of women are prepared. However, there is a lot more to be done. A lot of women still see women as competitions. That's the part that makes me sick, because for whatever it is, for whatever the reason is, some women, because of the little space that is available for women, the few women who get the opportunity to come in, see any other woman who is trying to find her way into power as a threat. So for whatever reason, they try to truncate the efforts of the other woman just so that they remain the only ones, you know, in the limelight. That is why we actually need to reorientate women, that we are no competition to each other. Rather, we are complementary. If I didn't make the efforts I made to ensure that a woman succeeded me, who would have done that? Now, if other women would replicate this in other climes, then you can imagine, I really, really think that if women would hold each other's hands and walk this walk together, we will be able to surmount whatever challenge stands in front of us. But most of the time, the people that challenge women's issues are women themselves. And I think it is simply because they are not educated enough to understand that we are partners in this and we are not competitors. So whilst we are at this, whilst we are talking about this gender inclusion, we, the women, need to educate ourselves, educate other women, especially the younger girls coming up, to see ourselves as a team, to see ourselves as sisters, so that we can do this work together and not allow the male folk look at us like people who are not serious about this issue. I'm very, very convinced that there are a lot of women who are already equipped with the experience, who are equipped with the understanding, you know, to lead wherever it is they are placed, whilst we still continue to ensure that we raise more women and change the mindset so that we're able to work together.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's bring into our conversation Senator Itainang, and it's always a pleasure to have you. I know this is an area that is like ABC to you. I'm sure you know the history of our constitutional alterations or amendments, right from Adua Jonathan's era. We know the portions that were amended, down to when President Goodluck became president himself, and then, of course, the more expansive process was done during the late former President Muhammadu Buhari. And we know that each of those processes touched on different aspects, of our existence. It touched on judicial reforms, electoral reforms, inclusivity and accountability and all that. And Professor Mato had said, look, why didn't the National Assembly just dust the Ways panel recommendations rather than going this, route again and all of that? But for you, is this still necessary? You've been in there before. Do we still have to go through this process all over again?
Yes, we still do have, because after each election, different issues emerge. And it is those different issues that the amendment of the Constitution becomes necessary. Take, for instance, the judicial reform. Part of the issue that is being considered now is whether to start the presidential appeal election at the state level, or to start it at the at the Federal High Court level, or to start it at the Court of Appeal level and stop it there, and then to stop the gubernatorial election at Court of Appeal level, or to start it at Court of Appeal level and stop it. That is just make it 2 levels of courts, so that you don't overburden the court. And the other issue that is being considered is whether to ensure that the elections are held the same day, and all other issues. All this arose on account of the experience we had in the 2023 elections. So every election throws up other issues. The same thing with the Electoral Act itself. And then the question of gender inclusion arose. It went through the entire process, but could not garner enough votes to pass at the final stages. Then some other issues passed at the state levels, at the National Assembly level, but did not pass at the state level. So it is necessary at most assemblies, that is each of the 4 years, to consider the issues, because it arises out of the experience in the previous elections or the experience. Take, for instance, the question of succession. If a serving governor passes on and his deputy succeeds him, it created a confusion during the Jonathan era. Mm-hmm. Under the Buhari era, God bless his soul, it was considered that it is important to lay this to rest, so as to avoid the doctrine of necessity. And so in 2018, as advisor to the president, the National Assembly said, look, it must definitely lay this to rest, that if you succeed, your principal, I don't like using the word principal because a deputy governor is not, the governor is not a principal to the deputy governor. The president is not a principal to the vice president. To the vice president. Each of them hold their office recognized by the Constitution. I'm sorry about this, but this is my opinion, and it is widely accepted. No, so the National Assembly in 2018 laid this to rest, that if you that, in summary, you cannot take the oath of office twice. That if the president passes on and you are sworn in as president, that is taken as your first term. If you are elected again, you can only stand election only once. And that is why President Jonathan was not qualified to stand the 2015 election. He wasn't qualified. And so he's not even qualified to stand any other election because he has been sworn in twice. So he can't take. So these are issues that arises after every election, which must be seen and addressed. So it is not possible for us to say, take the Ways report, dust it up, and just enact it. Some of the issues that were addressed by the Ways report are matters at the state level, are matters at the federal level, and the Ways report was mostly about electoral practice.
But Senator, we listened to our correspondents, across the zones. There were more, would I say, issues, proposals that cut across the zones. And these are issues of state police, not even the issues you're talking about. Yeah. Issues of state creation. There are issues of devolution of powers and all of this. These calls, do they merit, are they patriotic, do you think?
They are very patriotic, and I consult for the National Assembly, and I served at the Calabar zone, which constituted of which is made up of rivers, Akwa Ibom and Cross River, and as consultant to the committee. Now, my experience in that zone 3 days ago, 19th of July, was that people only came for state creation. They didn't address state creation and reserve seat bill. Very few persons, in fact, one person, the representative of the Chief Judge of Cross River State, addressed a question of making of judicial officers members of presidents and members of the Customary Court of Appeal and so on. And then all other issues, except women inclusion, creation of states, were not addressed. They didn't seem to want to talk about it, despite the fact that the compendium which we had showed every bill which had passed the National Assembly and which were being considered. So people didn't address most of the issues, except 3 or 4 issues. So this was a little disappointing, and it wasn't impressive. But let me commend the women and the men, because in the Calabar Center, there were mobilization from the University of Calabar, from the Cross River State University. There were mobilization from Akwa Ibom, River State women, and different interest groups came in their T-shirts and in different modes of showing force that they need the reserved seats bill. And we had to explain to the men, nobody was bold enough to stand up and oppose it, because of course it would have been dangerous to do it there. Yes, because like it or not, they were more than us, and they were more than the men, and of course they showed more power and strength and resilience. And of course, why would a man protest against equality? Because I've always held in my private family that my sons don't have to show my daughter where to sleep in my house, because they have equal rights. My daughters have equal right with my sons to my estate and in everything. And on the floor of the Senate, we had an occasion where, because of certain cultures, somebody stood up, a senator stood up on the floor and said, the place of a woman is in the kitchen. And when I had the floor, I said, is Ngozi Ogonjo-Iweala's place in the kitchen? At that time, he left. It's not in the kitchen. A woman has equal potential. And Ogonjo-Iweala, if we did not give her opportunity at the World Bank first, then as Minister of Finance, then a breach in Foreign Affairs, then back as Minister of Finance, she wouldn't have been seen good enough to be Director General of the World Trade Organization. Is that in the kitchen?
All right. Many thanks, Senator.
And then we have Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations from Nigeria in the kitchen. And it is people who sponsored and who supported her to go from Minister of Environment after DG of
She was the SSAP on MDJs.
Yes, on MDJs. Yes. If you did not give her that opportunity, which she wouldn't have been found good profiled to be Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations.
All right,
yet, those who tell other children, with the daughters of other people, that your place is in the kitchen, are supporting her. So,
all right. Many thanks, Senator Enang. By the way, you're in a safe space now.
I thought we should have given him a round of applause.
Well, I won't complain, because women are more than men.
Yeah.
This is
that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted to say. That you're in a safe space now.
Yes.
We have security.
Yes.
You support women for real, or
I really do, because they deserve equality.
Professor Mato.
All right, thank you. Let's get to Professor Mato now. You know, I think enough has been said about this seats for women. Of course, with the push and with the pressure we're seeing, it may actually see the light of the day. But I want you to speak about the creation of more states. That's the big buzz at the moment. There's about 31 proposals for new states, 18 requests for additional local governments areas, and speak to us about that. What's your own personal view? Do you think that we need that amendment?
Okay, thank you very much. Let me start by, first of all, trying to redefine what Claire, said about my position on women. No, I'm not against, having more women representation in either the parliament or in government. What I said was that it's very important that these things have been, discussed time and again. And I was a consultant to the late Justice West panel, and I know one of the major recommendations that they dished out was the issue of proportional representation, even women representation in the National Assembly and state houses of assembly. I thought it was, I mean, it's going to be a lot of just get to the library, bring out the report, dust it, and use it anyhow through the legislative process, and you save the whole country of the hassles that we are facing today. It's not a new phenomenon. It's been there for a very long time. Now, be that as it may, I support it. We should have more of them, in various at various levels of government. Honestly, my views about creation of more state is that I don't support it, and I'm very particular about it. You see, we have a written constitution. I'm not a lawyer. I'm a student of political science, but the constitution is not a legal document. It's a social, economic, and political document that is crafted in legal terminology, so it can have the force of law. So when lawyers make so much noise about the constitution, I just looked at them. You see, it's not possible for you to continue to mutilate the Nigerian Federation. I, for instance, grew up when we had 12 states. In secondary school that I attended in Kaduna, it was more of a regional school. We had people from the 6 states in northern Nigeria and several others from the other 6 states in the southern part of this country. I was in secondary school and it became 19 states. We celebrated it. As an adult, Nigeria became 21 states. IBB added 2, and then subsequently to the level that we are today. What I'm saying is that as a student of political science, I do know, without any doubt, that the multiplicity and the mutilation of the Nigerian federal units. Look, people say Nigeria is an accidental creation. I agree, because the federation that we run, was not manufactured the way the American federalism was manufactured. They said it was a conscription of British colonial administration to bring the northern and the southern protectorate together to form what you call Nigeria today. Agreed, even if that is the case. But there are certain basic issues that, look, people have argued time and again that any time you create a political unit, you are creating a new minority and a new majority. And you are adding to the whole scale of the local and national problems that you have as a people. I know for sure that a written constitution is a rigid constitution. A rigid constitution is almost impossible to amend. Now, creation of states or local government goes beyond ordinary amendment of the constitution of having 2/3 of the Senate, 2/3 of the House, and concurrence by the 2/3 of the State's House of Assembly. It requires referendum, right? That's one of the only areas that the Nigerian constitution speaks about referendum. So when people say, look, we don't like this constitution, drop it, and you'll be amazed that people who are benefiting or have benefited or are aspiring to benefit, from the garbage that they call the Nigerian constitution today, that are urging to drop the constitution and do another. So I'm saying,
yes, you seem to be speaking in the minds of the patriots, the group of elders, leaders, traditional leaders, and all that, who came up recently, to hold a confab.
I don't.
But you are saying this process may not be necessary. That's what you're saying. And they also say, this process may not yield anything.
No. I've been with him since his days in the House of Representatives. Look, the Joint Committee on Constitution Review of the National Assembly actually broke up in my hands. I was a consultant of the Senate and the House in 2007, in Mina. Yeah, when we went to Mina, and there was, this personality. There's always a personality issue between the Senate and the House.
Co-chairman.
The issue of chair and co-chair. And so the Joint Committee actually broke up in my hands, and I celebrated it when the First Amendment was achieved, because with the Joint Committee, it was impossible to achieve any amendment. But by the time the House of Representatives that are younger, more vibrant, and able to look at every details, went to do their work, and the senators doing their work, and they concord at the end of the day, the Constitution was amended for the first time. So I believe what I'm saying is that the plurality, the frequency with which you have made it, an issue is unnecessary. If we feel very strongly there are issues that require tinkering in the Constitution, let the process be. The Constitution has already created these two committees.
You've just said the issue of state creation.
Yeah.
It will not be easily, achieved.
It's not achievable.
Yes, except through a referendum. And how do you?
Not through a referendum. It's also when the Constitution is amended, part of the process is referendum. That's what I'm saying. Look, the crisis with Lagos, since when the president was governor of Lagos State, had to do with the creation of development areas. Many states did it because the Constitution gave the state assemblies powers with one hand and collected with the other. Said the state houses of assembly have the responsibility of creating additional local government councils. But then the local government councils in Nigeria were listed as part of the schedules of the 1999 Constitution. So even if the state assembly will create a local government, a new local government, it's not part of those local government councils that are scheduled in the Constitution. And so for you to have it, to insert it, you need to amend the Constitution. And the process of amending is very clear. You can't remove, you can't put a dot, you can't cross a T, you can't do anything if you don't go all the hog. I am saying.
Yeah, so what is in the details for those who are clamoring for state creation?
So what I'm saying is that it is obviously, and for Nigerian Federation, for the Nigerian Federation, the way I see it, my understanding of it, after living in this country for more than 63 years, I think we do not need this consistent mutilation of our federal units. And after all, what is the essence of federation? A federation is comprised of people who normally are of different characteristics and backgrounds. What is the difference? Yes, I can see difference between Akwa Ibom and Cross River State. What's the difference between Kano and Jigawa? What's the difference between Oyo and Osun? Or what's the difference between Enugu and Ebonyi State? They cannot, you can't call them federating units per se, because they share similar characteristics and so on and so forth. And federation is created by different sets of people in order for them to get their interests articulated and accommodated within a political union. That does not, present itself here. So we keep mutilating. If you create 100 states in Nigeria, by the end of this process, the next government that will come will ask for another, Nigerians will ask for another 100. So we need to refine our attitude. I think it was Nita Hajia that was talking about the major issue and contention in the Nigerian federal arrangement today is our attitude. Do we need to do elections? All the elections on one day? It was tried several times, but I tell you that the National Assembly will not accept it. Or even if the National Assembly accepts it and the state houses of the assembly concur, the president will not accede to it. I believe that sincerely, because this is not the first time. Most of these issues that are on the table today have been there several times. What is the essence? All we need is we want to have, whether elections are done in 5 different stages or they are done on one soup, the most important thing is to have an electoral system that is free, fair, and credible.
Okay, we have, yes. Sorry, we will just take these comments. I don't know if you have some. I have one. This one is from Arabi Kehinde Paul. He didn't indicate where he's sending this message from. He said, "Good morning. I followed most of the issues on the ongoing public hearing on the amendment of the 1999 Constitution, especially on issues like gender, state creation and local government autonomy, revenue allocation, and other very important matters. My take is that most Nigerians that will critique this eventually are not even following these hearings. Added is that it may be another process or exercise in futility and wastage of public funds. My take is a total overhaul of our view on governance and view of our federation." Arabi Kehinde Paul. Do you have anyone?
Yeah, I have this, but it looks like it's been handled by Hajia. I'll just read it all the same. Thanks, Hajia. But what if, after everything, the women are still not given a chance to participate? It's coming from Providence, from Lagos, talking about the special seats for women. I think you dealt with that when you talked about...
Yes. That this time, yes, there has never been this push. The president has never been this committed. We've never had a first lady that was in the Senate 3 times. And now we have all this. This is the time for us to grab the opportunity. And this bill is being sponsored by the Deputy Speaker House of Representatives. He knows his colleagues, he knows how to deal with them, and he's been guiding us on how to
Senator Taina was also in the National Assembly when this issue was also raised, and he alone could not get it up. But let Mike from Lagos
the momentum is different now.
Listen, Mike from Lagos says, I get amused each time the issue of seats for women is discussed. What do we really want? On the one hand, we talk of equality, and on the other, we ask for handouts. I will have been offended by all this talk if I was a woman. Well, thank God you're not a woman. I'm sure I will say that. I won't see my seat equal to that of someone who slugged it out with all comers. Anyway,
okay.
Mike.
On the issue of the special seats, we're asking for equity. Equity is when you help someone that is not at par with the other to attain the same position.
And not equality.
Not equality. We are not talking, we are partners in progress. We are not rivals. We are not fighting with them. No. We have been faced with systemic barriers. The gatekeepers in the political parties, you have just the office of the woman leader. Out of 25 of the NWC members of my party, we are just 2. We recently succeeded in having my seat as an NWC seat. If you don't ask, if you don't lobby, how do you get at par with the men? This is not time for activism. It is time for advocacy. And we are not being belittled. No. The barriers that we face, that the men do not face, is what has disadvantaged us. The men are more economically endowed. Elections in every country is capital intensive. And how many women millionaires do we have that will risk their little resources into such? Are you getting me? But it is not possible that you ignore up to 50% of your population on the decision-making table. Who makes decisions for women? So that is why we are saying these seats should be given to us. We are not going to fight the men on their unreserved seats. This gift should be given to us so that our voices, our presence, yes, can be where decisions are made, so that we can be part of the decisions that concerns us.
And it is
in the National Assembly and State Assemblies, Nigeria is ranking at the lowest level when it comes to gender inclusion in governance, both in appointive and elective positions. And the only legitimate way which other countries have achieved, like Rwanda, that has achieved up to 60%, is the quota system, where you set aside seats for the women, for them to contest and take part in national development.
Nadia, because of time, we need to, round up this conversation. Very interesting, perspective you have brought out. And we hope that when women get the seats eventually, if this passes, that, the barriers that women face would be dealt with, just so we can have more women, not just take the reserved seats, but of course take other seats that, are open to both men and women. Senator Itainang, your final words as we round up the conversation.
Well, I want Nigerians to be more active on other issues, and I want the legislators, because it has to pass the National Assembly first before it can get to the State House of Assembly, to accept that the clamor by the female gender is not a threat to the men, and the women to also accept that if this passes, and that they are not only to contest for the reserved seats, that they can go for every seat. You can go for every seat, to allow this. And for the advocates of state creation, we should, if it becomes necessary, but we should think that, yes, the advocacy is not selfish. Because if you come to like the Cross River State example, we have the request for Ogoja State. And when you consider the historical antecedents, and when you consider that Cross River, the capital is Calabar, which is 6 or 7 hours from Ogoja, and the question of there is a group of them who are Gedes, who are from Benue State, who have come to say, look, we want to join the new Cross River State called Abuja State. Issues like that, contiguity and affinity, consanguinity, all those elements should be considered in states like that. They are historically necessary on that basis, creation of states. And then we have I'm going to conclude. We have some very contestable issues in Akwa Ibom, where people are saying, yes, we agree to the creation of Obolo State, but you cannot create your state on my land. The BBO stock are saying, look, there is a group of people they say were settlers. You can't. So all this has to be balanced in, and then that arises from on other areas too. But I also say that at least one state should be created for the southeast, so that one state should be created for the southeast to allow for equity.
Thank you very much, Senator Ita Enang, former presidential aide, legal practitioner and consultant to the National Assembly on Constitutional Amendment. Many thanks for being our guest and for your insights. We hope that we'll have, another conversation where we can, talk about all of this. Dr. Mrs. Nita Bayak George, politician, administrator, social engineer, and entrepreneur, gender advocate, and president of Junita Initiative for Women and Child Development. Many thanks for being our guest. In 30 seconds, what will be your final words?
Very importantly, we need to understand, like Hajia mentioned, for the sake of emphasis, we are not seeking equality. We are seeking equity. However, even if we are seeking equality, it is not anything wrong to do. We are joint owners of this country. We are partners of the development of this country. So if we say that we want to be at par with the men, it's not something that I think anybody should frown at. Again, on the creation of states, whilst we should not continue to polarize this country, because with the creation of every other fragment, what we're doing is creating reasons for people to see certain kinds of difference between this person and that person, between this group and that group. However, there are some of these states that actually need to be created, like the Gurara state in Kaduna state is something that is very critical. And sorry, let me make this point, please.
All right, maybe I should also ask for on one state. Thank you very much. I think we need to leave it at that point because of time quickly. Professor Kabril Mato, political scientist, thank you so much for being our guest. We appreciate you sincerely. And of course, Hajia Zainab Abubakar Ibrahim, Deputy National Women Leader, APC, Deputy National Secretary, IPAC, Executive Director, Director of Women Affairs at IPAC, and Chairman Board, Federal Teaching Hospital, Gombe. It was indeed a delight to have you. And
my final word?
Your final word will be if the bill sees the light of the day. I think we'll have another program for that.
The bill should see the light of the day because Nigeria needs to align with other developed nations. Nigeria is the giant of Africa. When Nigeria catches cold, Africa sneezes. But Nigeria should not be left behind when it comes to gender parity, when it comes to gender inclusion.
I'm not gender biased. The two women have spoken. You speak in 30 seconds.
Well, my urge is that the National Assembly should not continue to over-dramatize constitutional amendment process. It's necessary if it is necessary.
Senator Ita, you support the women, so of course we can end the conversation now.
Thank you very much.
All right, so that's it. We take a break. After the